everyone, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by eBay Motors Group, with Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters.
Well, Phil, we've got a bit of competition today, haven't we? From,
It depends, I suppose. Yeah. There'll be. We'll have to be careful which side we sit on. Won't we on this one?
Yeah. But put it this way: we could be a welcome distraction for some people.
Yes. Yeah. Depending.
Yes.
And have you got your bunting up?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The virtual bunting is up in the virtual studio.
I suppose the question is what will happen with car sales today? Will people go out into the showrooms, spend time online looking for their next car, whilst other things go on, or what? I suppose we'll see what happens and what comes out in the news on Tuesday after another bank holiday weekend, Curtis.
Yeah, I suspect there'll be a lot of dual screening going on Saturday during the coronation.
So you pledge your allegiance to the king, yes. So we'll keep an eye on that, but I'm sure we've got 3 days, haven't we, this time for car sales? So that's
yeah, we have indeed. And a question for you, Phil: quiche or coronation chicken?
Definitely quiche, as long as it's not coronation chicken quiche that people have been talking about as well. But yeah, I'm not a coronation chicken person at all. Never have understood that mixture of flavours at all.
Oh, well, I'm disappointed because I'm very much a coronation chicken man.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what I'll be.
As I say, it's a split day for everybody today. So
it is, yeah.
We'll see. And we've got to bear reference because we are going to be playing this extract from it later on in the show. But if you haven't caught the complete interview that we happen to have with Pete Waddell, who's the CEO of Big Motoring World, who many of you will know, that we managed to catch up with Peter earlier on in the week, and very open, honest conversation as you would expect from Peter in terms of his background, where he came from, and some of his aspirations going forward for the business. So we will, like I say, we'll play an extract for that later on in today's show, but do listen back to the full interview that will be on your podcast feed from earlier this week.
And also a reminder that our full interview with Darren Martin, with Darren talking about April's pricing trends across CAP HPI, and also his views on the likely impact of the 3 May bank holidays. So that's still available. It's on your podcast feed, so definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, and as always, we are joined this week again by Stephen Whitton, who in his latest Menable Moment. So do stay tuned for that. Stephen is out and about and sharing some of his thoughts on this second bank holiday of May.
Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by eBay Motors Group.
So headlines this week from AM Online, Motor Trader, Car Dealer and Auto Retail Agenda. Starting with new car registrations growth for the 9th consecutive month in April, up 11.6%, as Cox Automotive forecasts a boom in new and used car sales in 2023. We'll have a roundup of the latest financials from Swansway and Waylands. They're both full years, plus Q1s from Sytner and Group 1. Plus, we've got 2 dealer group acquisitions to talk about.
So in a 4-day working week, it's not been a bad one for headlines, has it, Curtis?
Yeah, we could actually do a 2-parter for this show. There's been so many stories breaking over the course of this week, and yeah.
And it was interesting because I think we wasn't sure whether the new car figures would come out before the bank holiday because they're normally around the 5th or 6th of the month. So actually today's new car figures we're talking about has kind of come ahead of many of the European markets for the first time for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. And as we record it, the van registrations have only just landed, so we'll be able to talk about those as well.
So as we said, we head over to AM Online first off, and this is on what we were just discussing there, that SMMT upgrades their new car outlook after ninth consecutive month of growth. Now that's on the back of the April figures coming out at 132,990, and that is an 11.6% increase on the month compared to 2022 that finished just over 119,000, and takes the year to date up 16.4% to just over 627,000. What is interesting with this is again similar to last month, though, Curtis, isn't it? Very much driven by that fleet and business sector now, as those sort of OEMs move towards registrations in that leasing, contract hire, and rental market away from that private market now.
Yeah, definitely. So the registrations for the month were led by those large fleets, so fleets over 25 vehicles, which grew by a third, 33% to 68,500 units. And as you say, that's very much a result of improved supply. But deliveries to private buyers fell by 5.5% to 61,342 units, while smaller business fleets, so the sub 25 fleets, accounted for just over 3,000 registrations, so a rise there of 13%. But yeah, it is now driven by the fleet sector, which we were talking about this over recent podcasts about how fleets had held onto vehicles for longer than their natural running periods, that sort of typical 3-year cycle, and they are replacing now as supply improves.
Yeah, and obviously, as always, there's a large section talking about the shift of fuel types, and that says diesel drop year on year down by 13.4%. Interestingly, though, that petrol actually rose slightly in terms of percentage share, up 4.1%. But everything is in battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids now, isn't it?
Yeah, so BEVs for the month, they took a 15.4% market share. So the second most popular fuel type, with deliveries up by more than half to 20,500. Plug-in hybrids also posted strong growth, up by 33%, with 8,500 units registered in the month. And hybrids were up 7.7% to 15,000. So as a result of that, when you combine them all, electrified vehicles accounted for more than 1 in 3 registrations over the course of April, with petrol taking a 58% share.
Yeah, and as alluded to in the headline there, that the SMMT have taken the opportunity on the back of the April performance to revise their forecast for the year 2023, and that's where they've increased it now to just over 1.8 million registrations for cars there, haven't they, Curtis?
Yeah, and we'll find out in a minute how accurate that forecast is, won't we, Phil? But interestingly, I had a look at the SMMT press release. They've actually softened their battery electric vehicle forecast for the year. So they're looking at a market share drop from 19.7%, which was their original forecast, to 18.4%. So just over a 1% drop, which isn't much in the scheme of things, but it's kind of unwelcome, isn't it? Because the drive is very much towards electrification and transitioning to EVs, and that doesn't look as though it's got the momentum that it needs, certainly this year. So the latest outlook for 2024 suggests that 22.6% of new car regs will be battery electric vehicles. And again, that's a downward revision from the SMMT's original forecast of 23.3%.
Yeah, and it's all going to get very interesting, isn't it? And we won't go into the details now, but obviously when we start, because we've talked about it numerous times over the last few podcasts around the Chinese brands coming, the speed in which they're coming, and how they'll start to change that landscape, particularly in that battery marketplace, because although they're not all battery electric vehicles that are coming in from these new entrants, but they are dominated by that battery electric vehicle market. And we mentioned recently with BYD signing a contract with people like Octopus, and obviously others are doing the same. So it's going to be very interesting how that market share starts to change, but you can see where SMMT is slightly less optimistic in the speed of that transition to battery electric vehicles than they previously were. So just before we move on to the LCV performance for April, we have obviously got the forecast for LCV as well. So SMMT have forecast that the outlook for 2023 for light commercial vehicles will be 326,000. That'd be a 15.4% rise on 2022. And then looking out to 2024, again, a marginal increase there to 347,000. And that would equate to a 6.6% increase based on their 2023 outlook. And similar, I mean, they are talking about that battery electric vehicles for LCV will rise to 24,000 units this year, and that'd be a 7.4% share for battery electric vehicles after a 43.9% volume rise. And then for 2024, they're talking about battery electric vehicle market in the LCV sector expected to rise by 62.9% on 2023 figures, and that'll take 11.3% share of the market. So some bold numbers there for the growth for LCV in the battery electric vehicle market, Curtis.
Yeah, definitely. And the van market, the new van market, it did get off to a slow start coming out of the pandemic, and it was certainly heavily affected by the supply shortages. But for April, the SMMT recorded the fourth straight month of growth with 22,665 units registered over the course of the month. So that was up 4.9%, and pretty much regaining some of the ground lost in those sort of pre-pandemic years. So in the year to date, 110,000 LCVs have been registered, and that's actually up 14.6%. And as we've reported over the last 4 months now, the largest volume growth continues to be recorded from that 2 to 2.5 ton size of vans. So that more than doubled over the course of April to reach 4,318 registrations. And looking at BEVs, registrations there were up 62.6%. So that's actually from a quite a low level. So that's an uplift of 1,500 units, giving BEVs a market share of 6.6%. So good showing there over the course of the month for battery electrics.
Yeah, it's slowly moving because that's been the challenging sector for battery electric vehicles for obvious reasons in terms of their range and charging requirements in that sector. So I think there's been a lot of shows recently that have sort of highlighted where the battery electric vehicle market is heading for that commercial vehicle sector. So a lot happening in that space, but maybe a slower recovery than many of the cars.
And heading over to Car Dealer for the next headline, which is sales of new and used cars expected to boom in 2023. New predictions reveal. Now, these predictions actually come from Cox Automotive, don't they? And some research that you've been working on.
Yeah, I mean, we publish our auto focus on a quarterly basis, and part of that report is that we forecast the new and used vehicle market in the UK, along with other editorial contributions and other things on the market. But yeah, I think we try and keep an eye on what's happening in that sort of forecast market. We are forecasting not dissimilar to the SMMT. We try and forecast less often and more. I don't know if you can't sort of say accuracy, can you, Curtis? We have to be very careful how we position this.
Well, it's interesting, Phil, because your forecast actually came out before the SMMT's reforecast. So
yes, yeah,
I'm not putting two and two together.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm quite comfortable where we are, and we spend quite a bit of time looking at this area of the sector and some of the rationale behind it. The April figures, we were fairly close on the April result, so we're within, I think, 3.1% of our baseline, the actual results. So quite comfortable with that, but to the point that we are forecasting a baseline of just over 1.9 million, which would equate for a 20.4% increase on the year 2022. But that's still a 15.9% down market on the average between the year 2000 and 2019. We have upgraded that from our previous forecast because of some of the activity we were just referring to, that return to the sales channels through rental, fleet, leasing, etc., new entrants coming in quicker than many would have expected into the UK market and doing those deals fairly early on. So there is a lot of appetite there now. There's a product coming into the market quicker than many predicted. We referred to it the other week with a 6% increase in production, 2022 over 2021. So there is more product coming. There is more incentives and commercial incentives for attracting either the private buyer or into that fleet leasing sector. So, we're kind of expecting a more robust recovery to the new car market than we may have previously predicted on that one. But I think, what I am in comfort that, us and the SMMT, we're in that sort of 1.8, 1.9 to 2 million marketplace. So we're kind of fairly aligned in terms of the direction of recovery for new cars.
And of course, if the forecast for the new car market, the Cox forecast and the SMMT forecast, if they come to fruition, then that's obviously going to boost the used car market. And you've got a revised forecast for used car sales, haven't you?
Yeah, and the used cars slightly playing out differently. And we talked to Darren Martin on the midweek interview around some of those challenges around battery electric vehicle adoption in the used car marketplace that facing some opportunities and challenges. And we discussed the both of them there with Darren. We are forecasting a 7 million, just over 7 million baseline forecast for the year 2023. That'd be a marginal increase on last year of 3.2% and slightly behind the average for that previous period up to 2019 of 3.8% down. But there are different dynamics hitting the used car market that we didn't push it too heavily, because with production recovery, with return of incentives, subvented finance, etc., in the new car market, that will take away used car buyers into the new car market that we would have previously had in the used car marketplace. So I think, slowly from a recovery perspective, to be around that, achieving above that 7 million mark and maybe closer to that 7.5 million mark, I feel that that's a fairly comfortable recovery, considering some of the headwinds we still face in the economy more broadly. So yeah, we're fairly comfortable with that.
And I think a lot of listeners will be pleased to hear that that particular forecast, a used car market over 7 million units, that really is what a lot of listeners will be waiting for.
It is, and the balance is making sure that profitability, profit per unit, retaining that margin on these used cars, and working with that new car market again. So, we don't want it to recover too quickly and start to distress profit margins for the retailers.
Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by eBay Motors Group.
Now, next up is an extract from our special interview with Big Motoring World's CEO, Peter Waddell.
And thinking a bit more recently with what we've faced, in the global market with the pandemic, since the expansion, rapid expansion, the 10-acre site, in terms of that preparation centre, you're talking about Peterborough in 2019, new retail sites in Enfield, North London in 2020, the acquisition of the two-site SW car supermarket business in Peterborough in 2021. I mean, this was all against the backdrop of the COVID, the pandemic, the lockdowns, the challenges faced there. What were the challenges of growing so quickly, especially during this pandemic? Or do you see the opposite? Did you see it as an opportunity for the business to grow during that time?
So what you need to remember is two things. If you have faith in you, then people will have faith in you. Okay? The biggest challenge I have now is I'm 57 years of age. I am not 20. Okay? A lot of people keep thinking I'm 20. I'm 57. I'm getting old. I have the grey hair and the wrinkles.
Don't say that, Pete. I'm not that far behind you. I'm only 52. Come on, don't wish our lives away too soon.
I've got to be a beer belly, or you should say that an old, overage beer belly. I don't really drink. Anybody that knows me will tell you I've had odd Jack Daniels, and my favourite drink is Asti Spumante, which is very cheap. But I remember we did a deal with Fresh Stream last March. I was on the boat, and we just done the deal. Millions upon millions of pounds come into my account. I was there with my son in Montenegro, and I remember the money come in. It was about 12 o'clock at night, and my son said to me, "Dad, we've got to celebrate." And I said, "Yes." So I said to my crew member, "Please bring me a bottle of the special stuff. This is my Asti Spumante, about £6 a bottle." And my son said to me, "Dad," he says, "you're the only man I know that's worth millions upon millions of pounds, and you have a bottle of Asti. Could you not have done any better?" And I turned around to the crew member and I said, "My son has a point. I'll have 2 bottles." And my son just turned and he said, "Dad, you are 100% carat gold." And that was the story of that. So when you go back to what we did, we have a vision. We have a vision of building a company to sell it. Our opportunity was, we're making money. Let's grow this business. First of all, the business was for my son to take over. We bought 2 sites in Canterbury. He wasn't interested. We've let him do his own thing. And over the years, he now is in the car business and doing an absolutely amazing job. He's 24. He's got several houses now, and he's built up a little empire himself, which I'm very proud of. And he's done it himself, with no help from his father. So I said to him one day, "Do you want me to help you?" He said, "Dad, I've lived with the best trainer for 17 years. If I don't know now, I'll never know. Please leave me alone." And away he went, which I thought was an amazing thing for him to tell me, So very proud of him.
Now, Peter, at the same time that you were growing the Big Motoring World business, adding sites, in September 2021, you launched Carzam, which was a very ambitious but unfortunately short-lived online car supermarket business. Can you tell us about the thinking behind the launch and what led to its closure in June last year?
Yeah, so you'll probably know a man called John Bailey who invested in Big. So he invested 12% of Big going back about 4 years ago. He was the international president of Cox. So he was always in America. And he'd been watching a company called Carvana grow his business. So he brought it to the table. I was actually up against it and said, "Now we'll grow Big." I've always been a retailer. And he convinced me one day to open up Carzam. We was in the middle of selling Big, was one of my things. And I built Carzam. We did it at the factory. We did everything there. And then as we were selling Big, the people that were buying Big said, "Peter, you have to separate these businesses." So the idea was that John Bailey then showed Carzam. I carried on with my Big transaction and worked on that. So John employed Michael Buxton and several other people from his past and from the boards. They took it over. It was doing very well. I had to stand away from it. And basically that was about 6 months before it closed. I then was told it was sinking. I then showed back up. A few of the members then left, and I ended up putting in millions upon millions of my own money just to pay most of the debtors back their money. So I actually spent millions upon millions of pounds paying off everyone to make sure that we did the right thing. And the business was then closed, and that was really it. But it was a John Bailey's dream. He was running it. He was, 50% shareholder with me. And then we had investors come in, and then that took me out being a 50%, and John Bailey and the investors sort of took it over. And that's how it went, really.
And do you think
very
there's...
sad. But watch the space. Watch the space.
Well, fascinating insight there from Peter Waddell, and it's what I particularly enjoyed about our interview with him was we went right back to the beginning, didn't we? And his background, growing up in very sort of challenging and humble circumstances in Scotland, the move down south, and then the move into the automotive car sales sector. Fascinating backstory.
Yeah, definitely. I think that many listeners may not know that about Peter. They might only see what they see in terms of today and what he pushes out in the social space. But I think it was good that he gave context to sort of his background, where he came from, and what made him and Big Motoring World what it is today, which was needed there. But really focused on growth. He's obviously cited in there. He had the Wimbledon site opening as we were chatting to him, and he's obviously got growth plans for the future. So still working very hard, and obviously shared some of his views of where he was going to get that stock from to support that growth.
Yeah, and also the hint of going more nationwide, because we make the point in the interview that Big Motoring World, very much a sort of southeast-based group, stretching up, well, from Kent up to Peterborough. But Peter's very much talking about going nationwide, doubling the size of the business, and also, he's got something else up his sleeve that he alludes to.
And as you said, he always has.
Yeah, he did say a number of times, watch this space. So I think we're going to be hearing a lot from Big Motoring World over the coming months.
Definitely. So talking about dealers, we've got some financials now. And like I said right at the start of the show, very busy week, financials and acquisitions. So we're starting off here with Swansway Group on strong financial footing after a 2022 financial results, and this is in AM Online. So, we've had, we're good friends with John, Peter, and David Smythe, are very good supporters of the podcast as well. I mean, this is a cracking result that they've published this week as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So the crew-based group's turnover, it declined 2.3% to £890 million, as pre-tax profits dipped 11% to 22.3 million during the 12-month period to the end of December 2022. But despite the decline, Swansway's 2022 profit before tax was more than twice that was achieved in COVID-impacted 2019. So, a really strong set of results here from Swansway.
No, and they do talk about that the site, the performance, which resulted in an EBITDA of 29 million and an 11 million increase in shareholder funds of 66.4 million, alongside a 3 million reduction in borrowings in that period, has left the business in very strong foundations for the future. And they do cite that although the profits did decline against the highs that they enjoyed through 2021, they believe that the output and the performance is maybe our peers. Is going to be outperform some of their peers in the sector there. So, I think the Smythe family are very comfortable with that performance, particularly, considering some of the headwinds that we still faced in 2022. But actually, as they say, all the way through this media release, that they are very well placed and very strong for future opportunities.
Yeah, and interesting looking at their unit sales. So over the course of 2022, the trading periods that we're looking at, they sold a total of 28,846 vehicles, and that comprised of just under 7,000 retail units, just over 7,000 fleet, and 14,600 used units. So again, strong showing there.
Definitely. So sticking with friends of the podcast and profits, that over to motortrader.com, and this is from our friend John O'Hanlon, that Wayland's profit up 15% to 3.1 million despite cost headwinds. So he's obviously citing some of the challenges around the cost of living, the energy crisis that's taking place, but actually still a very strong performance for the year 2022, sort of citing that strong performance in 2022 with pre-tax profits up 14.9% to 3.1 million, on turnover up 35.2% to 168.4 million, and on a like-for-like basis, the pre-tax profit were down 14.2% to 2.3 million, and that turnover was down 2.7% to 94 million. So again, putting some of this in context, he's been continuing to acquire and build and invest, hasn't he, through that period.
Yeah, and I'm sure I caught a headline elsewhere that this may have been a record year over the period of time that Waylands has been operational. And there's a good quote here from John O'Hanlon in the piece looking to performance in 2023, saying trading has performed significantly ahead of expectation throughout the first quarter of 2023, and the directors are forecasting good levels of profitability in the forthcoming year. So a good positive statement there from Waylands.
Definitely. And sticking with financials, but thinking about Q1 of this year and back over to AM Online, and this is that Group 1 Automotive delivers record financial results in the first quarter, talking about an acceleration of new vehicles, parts and service revenues has propelled Group 1 Automotive to a record set of Q1 financials. And this is the US-based car retailer saying that the overall revenue grew by 7.4% to 4.1 billion. That's equivalent to 3.3 billion in sterling, as gross profit grew by 0.4% to $727.9 million dollars there, and with the help of a 7.9% growth in new vehicle sold volume and a 3.7% growth in used vehicle sales. So again, some significant performances there from Group 1, citing obviously where the business is going, but they do go into detail of some of the UK business as well, don't they?
Yeah, and it's interesting to see the size of the UK business, which accounts for 22% of the overall group's new car sales performance. So Group 1 delivered an 11.2% uplift in new car revenues, which equated to £278 million, alongside a resulting gross profit up 16.7% to £26.2 million.
Yeah, so and there is a quote in here from the new Group 1 President and Chief Executive Darrell Kenningham, who said that Group 1's achieved another strong quarter. Our teams delivered record after sales performance in both the UK and the US as a result of ongoing investment in after sales in areas such as technician recruitment, innovation, and technology, and saying that their customers continue to respond by trusting them in with their business. So obviously very pleased there in terms of that performance, and interestingly really focusing on that after sales market for that revenue growth.
Yeah, and heading over to Auto Retail Agenda, and the headline there is Agency, Inchcape and Sytner report contrasting views on the impacts of agency in Q1. This is quite an interesting story because it looks at the Q1 performance from both Inchcape and Sytner, but sort of digs a little deeper into how the businesses have been affected by that transition or introduction of agency. So within the piece, it says Inchcape reported overall revenues up 50% with a 70% increase in distribution revenues. So, let's not forget that Inchcape globally does operate a huge distribution business, not so much in the UK, but within the quarter, a smaller 8% growth in retail revenues. So revenue growth was adversely impacted by the shift towards agency, said the retailer in a trading statement issued to the London Stock Exchange, and that affects certain brands within its portfolio. Whilst Sytner owner Penske Automotive Group, in contrast, reported a 1% increase in gross profit to £880 million for the quarter, which it said was aided by the shift to agency. So interesting contrast here. And there's a quote here from Roger Penske that Autocar picked up, saying, overall, we've been quite satisfied with it at the moment. So, indicating what agency is meant to the business. So according to Sytner, Mercedes-Benz pays 5% commission on each sale, with the retailer remaining in control of F&I.
Yeah, and obviously saying that they made a gross profit of 1,700, but in March it made an average gross of £3,125 per vehicle as well, and that the retail giant sold 6,033 cars via agency in Q1 compared to 47,662 new retail cars, and that's, I presume, across the rest of their agency model franchises there. So some interesting insight into, one, the comparison between those operators under that same agency, but actually, what's happening within that agency marketplace, because we talk a lot about other manufacturers holding back and trying to observe what's happening. I'm not sure this helps them observe what's happening, because you've got a conflicting story here as to performance.
Yeah, but it's interesting that the groups are starting to split out their agency and non-agency sales, and hopefully this will be a trend going forward when we start to see some of the results and quarterly updates from some of the other franchise groups that have embraced agency among some of their portfolio.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on Motor Trade Radio, powered by eBay Motors Group. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media, available on demand wherever you are on your podcast feed. Next up is our latest Menable Moment, looking at mental health and well-being awareness, issues and best practices across the automotive sector, with me, Stephen Whitton. Yeah, hi guys, Menable Moments time again. I'm out and about again today. The sun is shining, it's lovely and warm, and the birds are singing. What more could you want? It's beautiful. Anyway, you didn't want to hear that. What I wanted to talk about this time is hope. And I was really buoyed up this week to see another great newsletter from Phil. So I'm giving you a bit of a shout out this week, Phil, for your cracking little newsletter that you write that just shows what's kind of going on in the industry and all the projections and positivity and stuff around things that might be happening and improvements that might be coming about and stuff. And I thought, do you know what? That's exactly what we need, isn't it? It's a bit of hope. After all the doom and gloom and everything that's going on, we just need to know that, things are going in the right direction. So I wanted to just implore everyone to share that, really. If you're a leader or manager or you're running a business, share that with your team and let them know that, there are some little green shoots, if you like, or some lights at the end of the tunnel. And we've got some hope and some things to look forward to. And of course, this weekend, it's the coronation. Now, whether you're a royalist or not, into all that stuff or not, that doesn't really matter, because what the coronation really does emphasise, I guess, is it heralds in a whole new era. And we are pretty bloody good at pageantry and pomp and circumstance in this country as well, aren't we? Let's be honest. But apart from that, it heralds in a new era of hope and change and difference and, things sort of looking up, if you like. So just wanted to flag all of that up, really, and say, yeah, let's use the fact it is spring and weather's warming up. We've got a bit of hope on the horizon in terms of performance in our businesses. A couple of dealer groups this week posted that they've got increases in profit and stuff like that. So that's all good news. And of course, we've got the King being crowned at the weekend, and that heralds in hope as well. So share that message. Make sure everyone around you is right. Because by contrast, and Phil, you and I talked about this as well a little bit this week, that by contrast, there's been a couple of reports out that although we've got 3 bank holidays in this month, that's not a great time if you're a bit lonely. Now, loneliness doesn't always mean someone who's kind of completely on their own and, doesn't see anyone else. Loneliness can be a bit of a phenomenon that actually affects people even though they're around other people. It's a real deep issue and probably something for a bigger conversation. But anyway, if there are people around you in your business, all that stuff I was saying about hope and direction and, new shoots and all the rest of it may not have that much resonance for them, because they may well be going home and spending most of the bank holiday on their own. And like I've said before, our message really needs to get out to some of those more introvert, quieter people that keep themselves to themselves in our businesses. And we all know who they are. And quite often it's not the obvious ones either. So just think about all of that. Hope, new direction, great weather and all the rest of it. But there could well be some people around you who are feeling, a little bit lonely, maybe a little bit left out. So give a little mention and a little bit of a shout out to them as well. And keep your eyes and ears peeled for anything that you pick up. So anyway, have a fantastic weekend. I think we're going to do a bit of a wellbeing special coming up fairly soon, aren't we? So let's get talking about that, and we will speak very soon. Take it easy. Bye.
Well, spring very much in the
It's a little bit windy
with Stephen Whitton.
There's a little bit of a wind down there. I think we need to get him a little microphone with one of those little wind buffers on it. But you could hear the birds in the background slightly tweeting there. But as always, some food for thought there from Stephen around hope and definitely around that subject of loneliness that seems to be talked about quite a bit this week, and probably relevant that there's 3 bank holidays in the month and not everybody does get involved with things and that kind of thing. So now some food for thought there from Stephen, as always.
Yeah, and if you would like to get in touch with Stephen, he would like to hear from you. You can find him online at menable.org, or you can email him direct at stephen.whitton@menable.org, and it's Stephen with a PH. He's also on LinkedIn, isn't he?
He is definitely. So we final section now. We're just going to talk about a couple of acquisitions. It feels like we've not talked about acquisitions for a few weeks, Curtis. But
no, we wait a few weeks for an acquisition story, and then 2 turn up back to back.
Exactly, but they are 2 great acquisitions, and the first one is being covered in AM Online, and this is that Brayleys Cars acquires Grovebury Kia in Dunstable. So this is a great little Kia business that it's being acquired, but for an undisclosed sum. But this does take the Brayleys Group to 18 outlets now. So a great little purchase there for them, and right across that sort of Harpenden, Oxford, Enfield territory now, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And Brayleys is such a success story. When we first met up with Paul Brayley back in my Motor Trader days, the business was pretty much a soulless Honda site operating in just outside of the M25. But it has now grown to obviously represent Kia as well, but they've got Mazda, Renault and Dacia. And that representation is across Buckinghamshire, Hertfordshire, Surrey, North and South London, Essex, Kent and Oxfordshire. So Paul Brayley really has grown the business. And as you say, this is a good add-on. This is a good addition to the business.
Yeah, and again, there's a little bit of talking about the financials here, saying that Brayleys, which is the majority owned by the Dubai-based international investors AW Vassamani, isn't it? Sorry, apologies.
Rostamani.
Rostamani has experienced a strong trading performance, having grown its turnover from 157.8 million in 2021 up to 188.6 million last year, whilst actually being recently ranked as one of the UK's best workplaces in the large workplace category of great place to work. So seems to be a lot happening within this Brayley Group recently.
Yeah, and nice little comment there from Paul Brayley, who says the team at Grovebury Cars are hugely experienced and the business is renowned for delivering outstanding customer service. Its values are closely aligned to our own, which is why I'm so excited to have such a talented team join our group.
And finally, on a second acquisition of this week, that Lookers expands its Volvo footprint with the Waterhouse Cars acquisition. And this is being covered in Car Dealer, saying that the listed car dealer group, Lookers, has snapped up Chelmsford-based Waterhouse Cars, and that the deal actually sees another Volvo showroom joining Lookers' portfolio, and that Lookers will invest $2 million in its upgrade as well.
Yeah, and so this will bring Lookers Volvo representation up to 5 sites. So the new Colchester showroom will join sites in Stockport and Glasgow, along with Polestar spaces and after-sales businesses in both Manchester and Glasgow. And the new showroom will also join Lookers' existing Volvo showroom in the town itself.
Yeah, so again, you can sort of start to see this alignment now, can't you, with some of these OEMs, and we talked earlier about John O'Hanlon and his continual growth with Volvo and Polestar and that mark and others as well. But you can start to see where some of these larger groups and some of these larger partners now are just snipping up these little extra ones, aren't they, in terms of that portfolio and partnership with some of these OEMs.
Yeah, and it is key, strategically to just grow these portfolios, with brands. And there's an interesting quote here from Lookers' Chief Operating Officer Duncan McPhee, who says, "Growing our relationship with Volvo remains a priority, and our acquisition and the new investment in Chelmsford, as well as our commitment to redevelop our existing dealership in Colchester, are steps in the right direction for Lookers." So very, very much, a strategic look there.
Yeah. So again, like I said right at the start, busy day for headlines. Everything there from what's happening in terms of the new car and van market, and it's nice to see the SMMT following our lead on that one, Curtis. Joking. Some financials, some great performance financials, and again, comparing. It's very difficult doing the comparisons now, 21, 22, because of obviously the strength of the new used car market that we saw through that period and the challenges facing new. But it's good to see some of these performances come out and set some of these operations in sort of good positions for future growth there. But as I say, we said right at the start there, if you're not listening to the full interview from Darren Martin sharing his views on what's been happening in terms of used vehicle values, particularly by fuel type, and his outlook on where he expects them to go over the next sort of weeks and months, then do check that podcast out and have a listen to that. And as we played there earlier on in today's show, we had that snippet from the interview with Pete Waddell. It has been really well. It's been followed really well in the social. I've had a few conversations with people about it, so it's very worth a listen. Just 30 minutes, 40 minutes of your time just to have a listen to that interview with Pete Waddell. And that should really fill in your bank holiday weekend nicely, shouldn't it, Curtis?
Yeah, definitely something for everyone there. So unfortunately, that's all for now. So many thanks for joining us on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. We really hope you enjoy the coronation festivities over the course of the weekend. Until next week, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
You've been listening to Motor Trade Radio Podcast, powered by eBay Motors Group. We'll be sharing all the links from this week's headlines on Monday morning. So to make sure you receive them, just subscribe to the free newsletter on our LinkedIn page. Just search Motor Trade Radio Podcast.